Sure. So I am Bill Perkins, Dr. Bill Perkins, here at Stockton, where I'm actually an adjunct professor. Born and raised here in New Jersey, grew up in Maple Shade, graduated from Maple Shade High School. Shortly after graduation, I joined the Air Force and, entered active duty. Did 4 years serving in the Air Force, served in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And, when it was time to, transition out, I ended up transferring into the New Jersey Air National Guard, where I became a member of the 177 Fighter Wing, down the road. Typical military student, transferred to about like 5 different colleges for my undergrad. Graduated with my undergrad from a university in Iowa, Upper Iowa University. And then, I had a career in law enforcement, Margate City Police Department. Father, of two of their adult children. My daughter actually graduated here at Stockton in the business program. My son serves in the Coast Guard. And, in the midst of being a parent and law enforcement officer, the Air Force kept calling me back, and activating me. And so I kind of did a transition and also decided to pursue my graduate studies, here at Stockton. Because I saw, like, I had a vision of eventually growing into a military leadership position, which ultimately happened, where I eventually retired from the 177 Fighter Wing as the unit's Command Chief Master Sergeant. Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry about, I should have meant that.
Yeah.
So I remember being in the Master of Arts in Instructional Technology program and the MAIT program. And Joe Marchetti, Dr. Joe, he and I built a great relationship. And Joe was kind of a mentor to me. And he knew I was looking for different doctoral programs. And the lead program had been designed and developed, but hadn't been implemented yet. And I think it was about a year out. And he kind of put me on hold. He said, listen, as a mentor, I want you to kind of hold off and jumping into another program. We're going to have a program here at Stockton that's going to be tailored, like perfect for you. And he said, so, please hold off and try it. And actually, so I applied for the program. I was the first interview and the first to be admitted into the program. So I loved it. What I saw was, leaders from different practices across the continuum. You had chief financial officers, you had leaders in education. I was the military guy. And then you had people serving in leadership positions here at Stockton, different roles in education. So it was truly a very rich environment for getting different perspectives based on people who came from different backgrounds as far as the area of practice of leadership. Actually, I have more. I have more to that.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, Amy Ackerman roped me in. I don't know if Amy. She was heavily involved in the Master of Arts in Instructional Technology, the MAIT program. And as a military leader, I saw some deficiencies, in myself. Also be a Gen Xer, I wasn't really in tune. Like, I knew how to do PowerPoint, but I didn't have any strengths in like developing asynchronous learning and collaborative programs for presentations, and I wasn't very tech savvy. So I wanted to strengthen those weaknesses. So I saw Stockton had an MAIT program here, and I met Amy for an interview, and she was awesome and kind of roped me right in, and I applied and loved the program. And then, like I said earlier, that's how I came across Joe Marchetti, and he just kind of put me on hold here for the lead program. When he detected I was like looking around. So, two words come to mind. So transformational and enriching. So when I saw myself as a very strong leader already because, having served in the Air Force for as long as I had, but in the capacity I had, reaching some of the top ranks in the enlisted structure, only 1% make Chief Master Sergeant, and then 1% of that 1% make Command Chief. So I kind of felt like the Air Force equipped me as a leader, gave me those, what I call horizontal leadership, those tools for the toolbox. So, I had a very in-depth knowledge and practice of everything from organizational change to strategic planning to conflict resolution. But here comes the transformational part is, I never really concentrated on, those leadership habits, and mindsets, and leadership capacities, like the depth that goes with the breadth of leadership. Like, how well do you implement organizational change? What's your mindset in the moment? Do you reflect? Can you reflect in the moment? Have you built that type of capacity? So I will say that the EDD program actually developed me. And I just remember, one of the architects of the program, George Sharp, called it a development program within a doctoral program. And that's the enriching part. And the enrichment was the fact that I developed as a leader. I didn't just come out with a greater understanding of leadership. I don't know how much more you could have given me of that, with all the Air Force leadership schools I had attended and graduated from. I remember, Dr. Pam Vaughn, said I was like a walking leadership textbook, and that was because of all the professional military education I had. But I really never concentrated on development of my capacities, never was able to, actually reflect in the moment, look at myself from outside in, and, see if I was optimal in the moment based on my mindset. Right. So I think the program gave me that capacity. Nothing specific other than my aha moment coming from George Sharp's mentorship, along with Joe Marchetti, of course, to get me to have that trigger, that aha moment that I needed to develop vertically, and with vertical leadership, that capacity development. But the other one that comes to mind is just the collaborative environment in all professional leaders being in the same, classroom, to where, it could have been a program built on a greater degree of learning of leadership, but it wasn't. It was truly development with a collaborative environment where, because of the artifacts that are required to graduate the program, you have to show the actual practice and applications. Like if you think about how people learn, there's usually like a basic knowledge and then a development of understanding, but, how do we illustrate the true practice, the applications of what we learned? And the artifacts were great, but the artifacts were kind of presented and collaborated in the classroom with professionals. So you were able to actually fix real organizational problems with the people to the left and the right of you. You were bringing your organizational problems in an open forum and open discussion, and you would get actually great ideas and perspectives from the student body, not just the instructors or not just the professors involved. So I think that's a true testament of the program. Sure. So it's titled Action Logic Awareness and the Capacity to Lead in a Complex Environment. And it's probably great to talk about it now, especially how COVID emerged and, where there was a lot of leadership challenge that emerged with COVID. That my research was exactly that, like how certain mindsets and stages of adult development can kind of transcend the most optimal leadership in the moment when dealing with a complex environment. Complex environments, sometimes can, result in a little bit of a pull, where people will kind of revert back to an earlier stage of a development and it may be less optimal. People with maybe knee-jerk approaches. If your stage of adult development, which, kind of corresponds with that word action logic in the title, that action logic is your stage of adult development in accordance with Bill Torbert's framework. That stage or that prominent stage when faced with complexity will be kind of like the type of leadership or the type of management decisions that are transcended in that moment. So how to transcend the most optimal mindset takes very, very, let's say, I'll call it deliberate development efforts. Very, very strong deliberate development efforts. It takes self-awareness to kind of know where you're at in your prominent adult development stage, know the certain actions and behaviors that are associated with that stage. And if you know, based on the moment that you're in, where you're facing that leadership challenge, if they are less optimal, you need to know what is optimal and be able to transcend that. And that usually comes with some self-awareness and also awareness of the different stages and the actions and leadership behaviors associated with those stages. So, my research involved, I did a kind of a mixed methods approach, whereas I had some narrative design where I had some participants engage in like leadership journaling when faced with complexities. And I would have to go back and code the behaviors in that journal. And it was great. It was a great experience, enriching for me. George Sharp actually was my dissertation chair, and he assessed a lot of leadership growth just within me from participating in writing my research and collaborating with my participants. And then also, too, I had an opportunity to interview participants who were, people who were like the who's who, the gurus in adult development and, vertical leadership, So it was great. It was a very enriching experience on my end. I actually felt the growth, in myself as a leader. A world-renowned author and, a theorist in vertical leadership actually participated in validating one of my instruments. And now I'm taking that instrument and putting it into use as I now transition from, having that dissertation published to taking some of that framework, creating some of my own framework in development to foster and cultivate that vertical growth and development in leaders, whether they're facing complex challenges or they just want to grow. So right now I'm kind of taking some of my framework from my dissertation and transitioning it into a book. Sure. That process, it took a little time. However, it was well worth it. I've actually been contacted where individuals who are engaged in research have wanted to use some of my framework and reference my research in their research. So it was great. I actually went through ProQuest, and ProQuest does a good job feeding data, and as far as how many hits my research gets, and apparently there's a lot of people out there who are researching vertical leadership. So I do get requests once in a while for using my my work and my research in other research. So it's been a great experience. Well, I'd have to say, I was going to, once I made Chief Master Sergeant, I had a plan for retiring and then doing some type of work with vertical leadership, whether it's try to move on and gain a position with the Center for Creative Leadership, go into research, coaching. But, when the pandemic hit, I was approached to be the Command Chief Master Sergeant and apply for that position, which I got. So I think achieving and, attaining the top rank position within my unit and, across the continuum, even in the Air Force, like I said, we're the 1% of the 1%. I think that's a testament to what the program did for me, because not only, was there that extrinsic, hey, I reached the top, but there was an intrinsic desire for the greater good, and I was in the right mindset to help my organization lead through a pandemic. I had 1,200 airmen who counted on me and needed me, for their own resilience. And to be able to get through this pandemic required, complexity science, and not a lot of leaders know how to lead through, that complex environment, that VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment. And I think it also takes that post-conventional mindset that, that later stage of adult development to get through that type of challenge. So I think as far as my military career, the EDD program really helped me optimize. And as far as on the enriching side, I'm involved now. I just gained a position with Coach Kimberly International. So she does a lot of vertical work through Bill Joyner, who's another one of those leading theorists at Who's Who in vertical leadership. So she saw something in me when I was gaining my certification through Bill Joyner as a leadership agility coach, which is vertical based. And she approached me and offered me a position. And I also now certify people in a resilience building leadership program credential, the RBLP. So, for my intrinsic desire to develop other leaders, I'd have to say my work through Coach Kimberly and, and the RBLP program are kind of fulfilling that need and desire. And then I was recruited by the FAA to work as a emergency operations specialist, which really they're just honing in on the horizontal skills, that I bring to the table with writing programs for emergency operations for the Federal Aviation Administration right out here at the William J. Hughes Center.
Right.
So, so it made me very marketable to gain that position, but really, it gave me the capacity to develop other leaders. So I have to say those two other roles I talked about, the one with executive coaching and certifying other leaders in the RBLP framework, I think fulfill that intrinsic desire that I gained from being a vertically developed, leader, which came from that EDD program. I think when I highlighted the fact that the program had transformed me and enriched me, I think I just look through different lenses now. And I tend to, try to be the most optimal in the moment instead of just, looking for that win, with that achieving mindset, that I think years of, being in the Air Force kind of pounded into me it was all about the win, whereas now it's just like I tend to be more of a listener with empathy and humility as a leader, and and just being more about being catalytic for others to lead and develop, and maybe just sometimes lead from the back when needed, let somebody else take the wheel, and then kind of coach them, steer them, teach them. So I think it, there was a transformation of me being more of that, achieving, got to go for the win, to more being a catalyst, even if it involves, suffering a little bit of a loss, but making it a learning lesson for others to develop. And I think it's just more of a holistic lens I look through now. And when dealing with complexity, it's, it's necessary to be able to shift lenses. So I think it's that capacity to shift lenses and with empathy and humility that made me a better leader. And this is just from conversations from fellow cohort members. There was, in the end, I remember we were kind of polling, who embraced the vertical side of the program and who didn't. It was kind of like everybody raise your hand. And there was a lot of people who really didn't care about the vertical side. They needed a doctorate for their position at work. And any program out there can fill a square for you, as far as getting you there, whether it's for an interview or, a requirement for a position. However, there's a lot of nurturing, properties to this program that you can really, use it as a development program within a doctoral program. So I would recommend, I mean, it's there for you to embrace. I recommend for anybody to embrace that side of the program. If you really want to develop as a leader, and think about what COVID did when COVID emerged. It challenged everyone. So if you were a square filler and your organization was looking at you and you are it to make those key decisions and lead your team, were you equipped to do it? And I think everybody needs to actually ask themselves that question, to be honest, whether or not they were in the right mindset, whether they were optimal in some of their leadership challenges, because this program will give you that capacity to lead with an optimal mindset and be able to transcend the right leadership for the moment. But you have to embrace it, and you have to want to develop.